The notification came at 3:47 a.m. I only noticed it because little Zoe had woken up with another nightmare, and I was stumbling back from her room when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Half asleep, I almost ignored it. Credit monitoring alerts usually meant nothing serious, maybe a subscription renewal or a gas station hold. But something made me swipe it open anyway. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Your American Express account has been closed due to suspicious activity. Please contact customer service immediately. I stared at the screen, blinking away sleep fog. This had to be a mistake. I hadn't used that card in months. It was my emergency backup, the one I kept for real emergencies only. My heart started doing this weird flutter thing as I opened the banking app with trembling fingers. The balance made my stomach drop to the floor. $17,463, all maxed out, all spent in the last 6 weeks. Charges from cities I'd never been to, stores I'd never heard of, amounts that made my eyes water. The most recent purchase was from somewhere called Luxe Boutique Miami for $800, time-stamped just 4 hours ago. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, phone shaking in my hands. My husband Marcus stirred beside me but didn't wake up. Good thing, because I couldn't form words anyway. I scrolled through the charges again, hoping somehow I'd misread them. Nope, still there, still impossible, still ruining everything. That's when I saw the name on the account notes, an authorized user I'd completely forgotten about, Vanessa Chen, my best friend since college, the person I trusted more than anyone, the woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd held my hand through 3 miscarriages, who'd helped me paint Zoe's nursery when she was finally born healthy and perfect. Vanessa, who disappeared 6 weeks ago without a word. I met Vanessa during our sophomore year at Portland State. She was the kind of person who could walk into any room and somehow make it brighter just by existing. While I was struggling through my accounting classes and working double shifts at the campus bookstore, she glided through art history seminars like she'd been born knowing everything about Renaissance masters and modern installations. We became friends the way some people become addicted to things, slowly at first, then all at once. She'd drag me to gallery openings where I felt completely out of place, and I'd help her organize her chaotic finances when her creative mind couldn't handle the mundane reality of rent and textbooks. We balanced each other out, or at least that's what I thought. After graduation, I landed a solid job at a mid-sized firm downtown. Nothing glamorous, but steady, reliable. The kind of work that meant I could save for a house, plan for a future, sleep well at night knowing the bills were covered. Vanessa bounced between temp jobs and artistic pursuits, always chasing the next big opportunity that never quite materialized the way she hoped. I didn't mind helping her out occasionally. 100 here for groceries when a gallery commission fell through, a few hundred there when her car needed repairs she couldn't afford. Friends help friends, right? Besides, Vanessa always paid me back eventually, usually with some unexpected windfall or a particularly good month of sales. When Marcus and I got engaged, she was the first person I called. When we bought our little house in the suburbs, she helped us move and christened the place with a bottle of champagne she definitely couldn't afford. When I struggled to get pregnant, she was the one who held me while I cried after each negative test, each lost pregnancy, each month that felt like failure. And when Zoe finally arrived, healthy and screaming and perfect, Vanessa was there in the hospital room before my own mother was. She held my daughter with tears streaming down her face and whispered, "She's going to be extraordinary, just like her mom." That's the Vanessa I trusted. That's the person I added to my emergency credit card 3 years ago when she was going through a particularly rough patch and needed something to fall back on. I never imagined she'd actually use it. It was just meant to be there, like a safety net, like insurance you hope you never need. The rough patch she was going through involved her latest boyfriend, a guy named Derek, who turned out to be married with 2 kids in Seattle. Vanessa had been planning to move in with him when his wife called her directly, and the whole thing imploded spectacularly. She'd already given notice at her apartment, already quit her part-time job at the art supply store, already reorganized her entire life around this relationship that turned out to be built on lies. She was devastated, but also practical in that way she'd always been. She needed time to regroup, find a new place, get back on her feet. I offered her our guest room, but she said she needed her own space to process everything. She found a month-to-month rental across town, nothing fancy, but it gave her breathing room. That's when I suggested adding her to the credit card, just temporarily, just in case she needed something while she was getting situated. The limit was high because Marcus and I had excellent credit, and honestly, I forgot about it almost immediately after setting it up. Vanessa never mentioned it again, never used it as far as I knew, and life moved on. She seemed to bounce back pretty quickly from the Derek situation. Within a few months, she was talking about new projects, new opportunities. She'd always been resilient that way, able to shake off disappointments and start fresh. She landed some freelance graphic design work that paid better than anything she'd done before, moved into a nicer apartment, started dating someone new. Her name was Jessica, and from what Vanessa told me, she was everything Derek hadn't been: honest, available, successful in her own right. Jessica owned some kind of consulting business and traveled frequently for work, which actually seemed to suit Vanessa perfectly. She'd always been independent, always needed her space. I was happy for her. After everything she'd been through, she deserved someone who treated her well. We still saw each other regularly, still talked almost daily, still maintained that easy friendship we'd built over more than a decade. If anything, she seemed more stable than ever. The last time I saw Vanessa was at Zoe's second birthday party. She brought this gorgeous handmade photo album filled with pictures of Zoe from birth to present, each page decorated with little drawings and watercolor borders. It must have taken her weeks to put together. Zoe, who was going through a phase where she was suspicious of most adults, took to Vanessa immediately and spent half the party sitting in her lap flipping through the album pages. That was 6 weeks and 4 days ago. The day after the party, Vanessa texted to thank me for including her and to say how much she'd enjoyed seeing Zoe's personality starting to emerge. We made vague plans to have lunch the following week, and then nothing. At first, I wasn't worried. Vanessa had always been sporadic with communication when she was focused on a project or deep into a new relationship. I figured she was busy with work or spending time with Jessica. I sent a few casual texts that went unanswered, but that wasn't unusual enough to set off alarm bells. By the third week, I started to wonder. I called and got voicemail. I texted asking if everything was okay. I even drove by her apartment building once after work, but her car wasn't there and the windows were dark. Still, people go out of town, people get busy, people sometimes need space. It wasn't until now, sitting on my bed at 4 in the morning, staring at $17,000 of unauthorized charges, that the silence made perfect sense. She hadn't been busy. She hadn't needed space. She'd been planning this. Every charge told a story I didn't want to believe. Flights to Miami, then Los Angeles, then somewhere called Tulum I had to look up. Hotel stays that cost more per night than I spent on groceries in a month. Shopping sprees at stores with names like Celestial Crystals and Ocean Breeze Lifestyle. Restaurants where a single meal cost what we usually spend on an entire week of dinners. She'd been living my financial life while I lived my actual one, working and saving and budgeting and trying to build something stable for my family. And now she was gone, and I was left holding a debt that would take me years to pay off, assuming I could even manage the monthly minimums. The worst part wasn't even the money, though the money was devastating enough. The worst part was that she'd done it all while looking me in the eye, while holding my daughter, while pretending to be the friend I trusted for over a decade. Every smile had been a lie. Every conversation had been a performance. Every moment of connection I thought we'd shared had been her calculating what she could take from me. I closed the banking app and opened my contacts, scrolling down to her name. My finger hovered over the call button for a long moment before I realized how pointless that would be. If she'd wanted to talk to me, she wouldn't have maxed out my credit card and vanished into the night. Instead, I screenshot every single charge, saved every transaction detail, and started making a list of what I'd need to do when the business day started. Cancel the card, file a police report, call my other credit card companies to make sure she hadn't somehow accessed those too. Dawn was starting to creep through the bedroom curtains when I finally put my phone down. Marcus was still sleeping peacefully beside me, completely unaware that our carefully planned financial future had just been blown apart by someone we'd invited to our daughter's birthday party. I looked at him lying there, trusting and unaware, and felt something crack open inside my chest. How was I going to tell him? How was I going to explain that my judgment had been so catastrophically wrong? How was I going to rebuild what she'd destroyed? But even as those questions swirled through my mind, another feeling was growing alongside the panic and betrayal. Something harder and colder. Because Vanessa might have thought she'd gotten away clean, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how far I was willing to go to protect my family. The customer service representative at American Express sounded bored when I called at exactly 8 a.m. I'd been awake for 4 hours, pacing the kitchen, drinking coffee, and rehearsing what I'd say. Marcus had already left for work with Zoe, dropping her at daycare on his way. I hadn't told him yet. Couldn't figure out how to start that conversation. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm looking at your account now," the representative said, her voice flat and professional. "I can see there's been significant activity in the past 6 weeks. Can you confirm these transactions?" I read off the charges I'd memorized during my sleepless night. Miami Beach Resort, $2,300. Nordstrom Beverly Hills, $1,500. Something called Azul Retreat Tulum, $4,000 for what looked like a week-long stay. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I didn't make any of these purchases, none of them." "I see there's an authorized user on this account, Vanessa Chen. Could she have made these charges?" Could she have? As if there was any doubt. She made them without my permission. This is fraud. The representative's tone shifted slightly, became more attentive. "I understand this is distressing, Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm going to start a dispute process for these charges, but I need to let you know that because Miss Chen was legitimately authorized on your account, this complicates the situation significantly." My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means that technically she had permission to use the card. The fact that she used it beyond what you intended doesn't necessarily constitute fraud in the legal sense. However, we'll investigate each charge and see what we can do. I hung up, feeling worse than when I'd called. The word technically kept echoing in my head. Technically, I'd given her access. Technically, this was my fault. I called my bank next, then my other credit card companies, checking every account I could think of. The damage seemed contained to just the American Express, which was both a relief and still catastrophic. $17,000 might as well have been $17 million for our household budget. That's when I decided to drive to her apartment. The building was one of those newer constructions downtown, all glass and steel with a fancy lobby that required a keycard to enter. I'd only been there twice, both times when she was moving in and needed help carrying boxes. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the lobby was empty except for a security guard reading something on his phone. I tried calling her one more time before going in, just to see. Straight to voicemail, same as it had been for weeks. Her outgoing message was still the same cheerful greeting I'd heard dozens of times before. "Hey, you've reached Vanessa. Leave me something good and I'll call you back soon." The normalcy of it made my skin crawl. The security guard looked up when I approached the desk. He was older, probably in his 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His name tag read Frank. "I'm looking for my friend in Unit 412, I said. "Vanessa Chen. I've been trying to reach her but haven't heard back." Frank's expression changed immediately, became more alert. "You're a friend of Vanessa's?" Something in his tone made my heart speed up. "Yes, why?" "She moved out about 5 weeks ago. Middle of the night, actually. Didn't give notice, didn't turn in her keys, left the apartment a complete mess." He leaned forward slightly. "Are you Sarah? Sarah Rodriguez?" I nodded, too surprised to wonder how he knew my name. "She left something for you." He disappeared into a back office and returned with a manila envelope with my name written across the front in Vanessa's distinctive handwriting. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. It was thick, heavier than I expected. Did she say where she was going? Frank shook his head. "Nope, just loaded up a rental truck around 2 in the morning and took off. Left owing 3 months' rent and a security deposit. The landlord's still trying to track her down." I thanked Frank and walked back to my car before opening the envelope. Inside were photocopies of documents I didn't understand at first. Bank statements, loan applications, credit reports. It took me several minutes of staring at them to realize what I was looking at. They weren't random documents. They were records of other people she'd scammed. The first set belonged to someone named Michael Torres. Credit card debt in his name totaling over $25,000. All charges from the same time period when Vanessa had been dating Derek, the married man. Michael's credit report showed multiple missed payments, accounts and collections, a credit score that had plummeted from excellent to terrible. The next set was for Jennifer Walsh. Similar pattern, similar timeline, similar devastating financial destruction. Then David Kim. Then Amanda Foster. 5 people total, including me. 5 people whose financial lives Vanessa had systematically destroyed over the past 3 years. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the handwritten note paperclipped to the back of my documents. Sarah, I know you'll probably hate me for this, but I need you to understand that I never meant for it to go this far with you. The others were different.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
They were just convenient. But you were my friend, and I genuinely cared about you. I kept telling myself I'd pay it back before you noticed, but then Jessica left me, and everything fell apart. I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. I'm leaving town, and I won't contact you again. I hope someday you can forgive me. The copies are so you know you weren't the only one, in case that helps somehow. I'm sorry. V. I sat in my car outside her building for 20 minutes, reading through the documents again and again. 5 people, 5 lives destroyed, and she'd kept records of all of it, like some kind of trophy collection. The pattern was always the same. Vanessa would get close to someone, gain their trust, get added to their financial accounts somehow, then drain them systematically while maintaining the relationship until she couldn't anymore. Then she'd disappear, leaving behind debt and devastation and people who probably blamed themselves for trusting her. I thought about Michael Torres, whoever he was, discovering his credit was ruined. I thought about Jennifer Walsh trying to figure out how her accounts got emptied. I thought about 3 other people I'd never met who were probably lying awake at night, just like I had been, wondering how they'd been so wrong about someone they'd trusted. The note made everything worse. She'd cared about me. I was different. I was her friend. But she'd still done it anyway, still spent my money while looking me in the eye, still disappeared without a word when she got what she wanted. I drove home and spread all the documents across my kitchen table. Marcus would be back with Zoe in a few hours, and I'd have to tell them both that our emergency fund was gone, that Christmas would be tighter this year, that the vacation we'd been saving for would have to wait indefinitely. But first, I had phone calls to make. I started with Michael Torres. His number was listed on one of the credit applications. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding cautious when I explained who I was and how I'd gotten his information. Vanessa Chen? He repeated when I said her name. You mean Nessa? Short, dark hair, really charming? That sounds right. She ruined my credit score, he said quietly. Completely destroyed it. I trusted her with my credit card when we were dating, and she ran up thousands in debt I'm still paying off. I had to move back in with my parents. I couldn't qualify for an apartment lease. We talked for 30 minutes. Michael told me about the months of gaslighting, how Vanessa had convinced him the charges were his fault somehow, how she'd made him feel crazy for questioning expenses he couldn't remember making. When he'd finally confronted her with the statements, she'd cried and apologized and promised to fix everything. Then she'd vanished. I filed a police report, he said, but they told me the same thing you probably heard. She was authorized to use the card. Technically not fraud. Nothing they could do. I called Jennifer Walsh next. Similar story, similar heartbreak. Jennifer had been a coworker at some temp agency where Vanessa had worked for a few months. They'd become close friends, went out for drinks after work, shared personal stories. Jennifer had added Vanessa to her credit card during a period when Vanessa claimed she was waiting for her own bank to approve her for a new account after identity theft. She was so convincing, Jennifer said, her voice still bitter years later. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person who really understood her, you know? Like you were special. I knew exactly what she meant. By the time I finished calling all 5 numbers, a clearer picture had emerged. This wasn't impulse or desperation or even greed exactly. This was a system. Vanessa had turned financial fraud into an art form, and she'd been perfecting it for years. Each victim had been carefully selected and groomed. Each relationship had been cultivated specifically to create trust and access. She'd study people's weaknesses, their generous instincts, their desire to help and be needed. Then she'd exploit those qualities systematically until there was nothing left to take. The timing was always the same, too. She'd spend everything she could as quickly as possible, then disappear before the bills came due. Leave town, change her phone number, start over somewhere else with a new identity and new victims. But this time felt different. The note she'd left suggested something had changed, some relationship that had fallen apart and disrupted her usual pattern. Jessica, the mysterious girlfriend I'd never met, who'd supposedly left her. I spent the afternoon researching Jessica's consulting business, trying to find some trace of her online. It took hours, but eventually I found a LinkedIn profile that matched the description Vanessa had given me. Jessica Martinez, business consultant, based in Miami. Miami, where the first charges on my card had originated. I stared at Jessica's professional photo for a long time, trying to understand what I was seeing. She looked successful, polished, legitimate. Nothing about her suggested she was part of Vanessa's scam. But the timing couldn't be coincidental. I was still staring at the screen when Marcus came home with Zoe. She ran into the kitchen, chattering about her day at daycare, covered in what looked like finger paint and graham cracker crumbs. Marcus followed her, loosening his tie and asking about dinner plans. "We need to talk," I said, closing my laptop. The look on his face told me he could hear everything I wasn't saying in those 4 words. That night, after Zoe was in bed and Marcus had processed the full scope of what Vanessa had done to us, I made one more phone call, this time to Jessica Martinez in Miami. She answered on the first ring, her voice professional and crisp. "Jessica Martinez speaking. Hi, this is Sarah Rodriguez. I'm calling about Vanessa Chen." The silence that followed lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. "What about her?" Jessica finally asked, and her voice was completely different now. Careful, guarded. "She's stolen from me. $17,000 from my credit card. I'm trying to track her down." Another long pause. Then Jessica said something that changed everything. "She stole from me, too. A lot more than $17,000. But Sarah, you need to know something else. I think I know where she is." Jessica's voice dropped to almost a whisper when she continued. "She didn't just steal money from me, Sarah. She stole my entire business." My grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" "We met about 8 months ago at a networking event in Portland. She was charming, funny, seemed genuinely interested in my work. I run a consulting firm that helps small businesses streamline their operations. Nothing glamorous, but it's profitable, and I've built a good reputation over 5 years. I settled deeper into my chair, sensing this was going to be a long conversation. Vanessa told me she was looking to transition from freelance design work into business consulting. Said she admired what I'd built and wanted to learn from me. I was flattered, honestly. She had this way of making you feel like a mentor, like you were really making a difference in her life. The familiar pattern was already emerging, but I let Jessica continue. I started bringing her to client meetings as an observer. She was brilliant at reading people, understanding what they needed to hear. My clients loved her. Within a few months, I was letting her handle some of the smaller accounts independently. She was good at it, really good, better than I expected. Jessica paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. Then she suggested we formalize the partnership, make her an official partner in the business instead of just a contractor. She said she wanted to invest some of her own money, show she was committed long-term. The paperwork seemed straightforward. I trusted her. My stomach was already sinking, anticipating where this was headed. She had me add her name to the business bank accounts, said it would be easier for her to handle client payments and expenses. I gave her access to my client database, my contact lists, all my proprietary systems and processes, everything I'd spent years building. And then she disappeared, I finished. Not exactly. That would have been cleaner. Instead, she started systematically contacting my clients, telling them I was having personal problems and couldn't handle their accounts anymore. She offered to continue their services under a new company she'd formed. My own clients, using my own methods, stolen right out from under me. The audacity of it took my breath away. This wasn't just theft, it was identity murder. She'd literally stolen Jessica's professional life. By the time I realized what was happening, she'd taken about 60% of my client base. The business I'd spent 5 years building was gone in 2 months. But that wasn't even the worst part. There's more. The money I'd let her invest, it wasn't hers. She'd taken out loans using fake financial documents. When those loans came due and she couldn't pay them, guess who was on the hook as her business partner? I closed my eyes. How much? $87,000, plus interest, plus legal fees when the lenders came after me personally. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the magnitude of Vanessa's betrayal. She hadn't just stolen from us individually, she'd perfected a system of destruction that went far beyond simple credit card fraud. You said you think you know where she is, I finally said. I've been tracking her for months. Hired a private investigator after the police told me the same thing they probably told you. She's been using the name Victoria Chang, running the same consulting scam in different cities. Austin, then Denver, now she's apparently in Phoenix. How do you know? My investigator has been monitoring her social media accounts. She's not very good at staying hidden. Still posts photos, still can't resist showing off her lifestyle. The investigator thinks she's already found her next victim. Something cold settled in my chest. Another business owner? A woman named Rita Flores who runs a successful catering company. Based on the investigator's reports, Vanessa has been following the exact same pattern, charming her way into Rita's trust, positioning herself as a potential business partner. We have to warn her. I tried calling Rita's business last week. Her assistant said she was in meetings with her new business consultant and couldn't be disturbed. I think we might already be too late. I stood up and started pacing around my kitchen, mind racing. What about the police in Phoenix? If we can prove she's running the same scam there, maybe they'll take it seriously. My investigator suggested the same thing. But we need evidence, not just suspicions, and we need someone local to file a complaint. That's when the idea hit me. What if I went there? To Phoenix? Sarah, that's dangerous. We don't know how she'll react if she's cornered. I'm not going to confront her directly, but I could warn Rita Flores in person, and I could work with your investigator to document what she's doing, build a case that the Phoenix police can't ignore. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. The investigator's name is David Park. He's based in Seattle, but he's been working the Phoenix angle remotely. I could put you in touch with him. Do it. Sarah, I need to ask, why are you willing to do this? You could just file your insurance claims and move on, try to rebuild your credit and forget this ever happened. I thought about Michael Torres, living in his parents' basement, about Jennifer Walsh, her voice still bitter years later, about the 5 people whose financial lives Vanessa had destroyed, and Rita Flores, who was about to become number 6. Because she's going to keep doing this to people, forever, until someone stops her. 3 days later, I was on a plane to Phoenix. I'd told Marcus I was visiting my sister, which wasn't technically a lie, since my sister lived in Scottsdale, but I wasn't planning to see her. I'd booked 2 days off work and arranged for my mom to watch Zoe, claiming I needed a short break to deal with some personal issues. David Park met me at the airport. He was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, with the kind of intense focus that made me immediately trust his competence. During the drive to his hotel, he filled me in on what he'd discovered. She's been in Phoenix for about 6 weeks, same timeline as when your credit card charges started. She's renting a furnished apartment downtown under the name Victoria Chang. High-end place, probably costing $3,000 a month. Money she stole from me, I said grimly. Most likely. She's been working the networking scene, specifically targeting successful women business owners. Rita Flores appears to be her primary mark, but she's cultivating relationships with at least 3 others. He handed me a folder full of photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Vanessa at restaurant meetings, Vanessa at business events, Vanessa walking into Rita's catering facility. She looked exactly the same as she had at Zoe's birthday party, just 6 weeks ago. The catering company is called Flores Family Kitchen. Rita started it 8 years ago after her husband died, built it from nothing into one of the most successful catering operations in the city. She employs about 20 people, handles everything from corporate events to weddings. Everything Vanessa would want to get her hands on. Exactly. Based on what I've observed, they're already talking about partnership arrangements. Rita's been bringing Vanessa to client meetings, just like what happened with Jessica. David drove me past the catering facility, a converted warehouse in an industrial district that had been transformed into something warm and inviting. Through the large windows, I could see a bustling kitchen operation and what looked like a showroom displaying table settings and decorations. Rita usually arrives around 7 a.m., David said, before any of her employees. That might be our best chance to talk to her privately. That night, in my hotel room, I rehearsed what I was going to say. How do you tell a stranger that someone they trust is planning to destroy their life? How do you make them believe you when the person you're warning them about is charming and convincing and has spent weeks building their confidence? I kept thinking about Jessica's words. Vanessa had a gift for making people feel special, for making them believe they were the only person who really understood her. Rita Flores was probably feeling that same intoxication right now, that same sense of having found someone who truly appreciated her vision and wanted to help her achieve it. At 6:30 the next morning, David and I were parked across from Flora's family kitchen, waiting. Right on schedule, a silver Honda pulled into the parking lot and Rita Flores got out. She was petite but moved with the kind of purposeful energy I recognized in successful entrepreneurs. David's photographs hadn't captured how young she looked, probably only a few years older than me. I walked across the street and knocked on the glass door. Rita looked up from where she was disarming the security system and came over, unlocking the door with a questioning smile. "We're not open yet," she said, "but if you need to place a catering order, I can help you." "Actually, I need to talk to you about Victoria Chang." Rita's smile faltered slightly. "What about Victoria?" "Can I come in? What I need to tell you is going to sound crazy, but I have proof." Something in my voice must have convinced her because she stepped aside and let me into the showroom. The space was beautiful, warm, and welcoming, with displays showing different event themes and sample table settings. This was clearly someone's life's work. "Victoria isn't who she says she is," I began. "Her real name is Vanessa Chen, and she's a professional con artist. She's stolen from multiple people, including me. I have documentation of everything." Rita's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, the beginning of anger. "That's impossible. Victoria has helped me tremendously. She's invested her own money in the business." "What money?" I asked gently. "Has she actually given you any money, or has she just promised to?" Rita hesitated, and I saw the first crack in her certainty. "She's been helping me land new contracts," Rita said, but her voice was less sure now. "Big clients that could transform my business." "Has she asked you to add her name to any bank accounts, any business documents? Has she asked for access to your client database?" Each question hit home. I could see it in Rita's expression, the growing realization that the partnership that had seemed too good to be true probably was. I spent the next hour showing Rita everything: the documents from Vanessa's other victims, the evidence David had gathered, the pattern of behavior that Rita was already experiencing. By the time I finished, Rita was sitting with her head in her hands. "I already added her to the business accounts," she whispered. "Last week, she said it would streamline our operations." "How much money does she have access to?" "About 40,000 in operating funds, plus she has access to client contacts, vendor relationships, everything." Rita looked up at me with tears in her eyes. How could I have been stupid? "You weren't stupid. You were targeted by someone very good at this, but we're going to stop her." That's when David called my phone. "Sarah, you need to get out of there, now. Victoria just pulled into the parking lot." Through the showroom windows, I could see a familiar figure getting out of a white rental car. Even at this distance, even after everything she'd done, my heart still jumped a little at seeing her. The power of old friendship dies hard. "Rita," I said urgently, "lock the door. Don't let her in. We're calling the police right now." But it was too late. Vanessa had already seen us through the windows, and the expression on her face when she recognized me wasn't surprise. It was rage. Vanessa pounded on the glass door, her perfectly manicured nails making sharp tapping sounds that echoed through the showroom. The charming smile I remembered was completely gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Rita, open the door," she called out, her voice muffled but commanding. "Who is this woman? What lies is she telling you?" Rita's hands shook as she backed away from the windows. "I can't believe I trusted her. How did I not see it?" "Because she's had years of practice," I said, pulling out my phone to call David. "She's a professional." Through the glass, I watched Vanessa's expression shift as she realized her Phoenix operation was blown. The mask slipped completely, revealing something desperate and furious underneath. She pulled out her own phone, probably trying to figure out how to salvage the situation or plan her next escape. David arrived with 2 Phoenix police officers within 10 minutes. The beauty of having documented evidence from multiple victims across multiple states was that law enforcement finally had to take it seriously. Federal fraud charges carry weight that local police can't ignore. When the officers approached Vanessa in the parking lot, she tried one last performance. Tears, confusion, claims that this was all a misunderstanding between old friends. But the banking records don't lie, and neither do the testimonies of 5 different victims across 3 states. The moment they placed handcuffs on her wrists, something inside my chest finally unclenched. She wasn't going to disappear this time. She wasn't going to reinvent herself in another city with another name. The pattern was broken. Rita managed to freeze her business accounts before Vanessa could drain them, saving her company and her employees' livelihoods. Jessica got her evidence for the federal prosecutors. Michael Torres finally had someone to testify that he hadn't been crazy or irresponsible. 6 months later, Vanessa pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. The restitution orders will take years to fulfill, but at least there's a legal framework now for getting our money back. More importantly, she won't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. I still think about that morning sometimes, watching her rage transform into panic as she realized her carefully constructed world was collapsing. That's the thing about karma. It doesn't always come when you expect it, but when it finally arrives, it's exactly what someone deserves. Rita sent me a photo last month of her team celebrating their biggest contract ever. Marcus and I finally took that vacation we'd been saving for. Zoe started preschool with a college fund that's actually secure. And somewhere in a federal prison, Vanessa is learning that some friendships can't be bought, borrowed, or stolen. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.